Hey everyone, welcome back to At Your Own Pace, the show for runners who are showing up however they can on whatever week life is handing them. I'm Mike of Mike Runs Marathons, and whether you're chasing a Boston qualifier, your first 5K, or just the next mile, you're in the right place. Every Monday, we open up with a little real talk from me and my week on the run, and then we sit down with someone whose story is going to leave you a little bit more fired up than when you press play. So lace up, settle in, and let's run this one together. I'm so excited to speak with my guest today, Nadia Ruiz, who goes by the name Iron Girl Nadia on social media. Her story and her dedication towards completing the world's most difficult marathons in the world, which includes 165 finishes overall, is incredible. And I cannot wait for you to hear not just about the mentality that's gotten her to these achievements, but about what's next and how she keeps falling in love with running over and over again. But before we get into today's guest, let's start with where we always start, with a check-in. And here's what's been on my mind this week. I wanted to talk about a couple of things that have happened over the last couple of weeks since Boston. You might see or hear Lulu in the background. I'm on dad duty right now, so I have absolutely not a care in the world whether or not that happens. But if you hear some grunting, a little bit of crying, that is her. So it's been 2 weeks since Boston, right? And it's been a struggle. I'm not going to lie. Now, it's not just a struggle mentally, because everyone knows if you run a marathon that when you finish your race, you get the post-marathon blues. They are real. I can attest to that after running 17 of them. It doesn't matter how many I run. After every marathon, I feel the same exact way, where you've trained for 12, 16, 20 weeks, potentially half a year or more for your race, and then it happens, and then nothing. You are kind of lost. You don't know what's next, potentially, if you don't have anything lined up, and you're not sure where you're going to go. You're kind of lost. And I have felt like that after every single marathon, even if I have one or two lined up for the future, which I usually do. And I have 3 marathons lined up for the rest of the year. Yet after every single one, I feel 2 things. 1, obviously sadness for the race being over. And 2, I feel like I'm back at 0. Like my endurance goes back to 0. My aerobic capacity goes back to 0. And I know it's a mind game. I know that I actually have the strength already inside me to run another race, but I just feel like I lose all my fitness, and it's kind of like I'm starting back over at level 1. And it really frustrates me, because now that Boston's over and it's been 2 weeks, 1, I'm dealing with an injury that I had before the race. I'm technically dealing with 2. 1, I definitely have a kidney stone again. For those of you that don't know, after the Boston Marathon last year, I technically ran Tokyo and Boston with a kidney stone, and it got stuck, and I needed to have surgery to get it taken out. Literally the day after I got back from Boston. Race was on Monday. I came back Tuesday. Tuesday night, I felt pain, ended up in the hospital. Wednesday was the surgery. So it was not the homecoming that I wanted. But 2, I have periodontal tendonitis, which those of you that don't know what that is, it is different from tendonitis of the ankle in that it is on the lateral side of the foot. So the outside of the foot, and it almost feels like you have plantar fasciitis on the outside of your foot rather than on the bottom. And it hurts. When you walk, you feel it every single step. And I went to go see an orthopedist because I talked to my physical therapist, and he thought that I had a stress fracture. And this was 4 days or 5 days before we were supposed to leave for Boston. So I went and got an x-ray. They had it looked at, not broken, which is fantastic, but the tendon is very sore and inflamed. And so I was in a boot for almost right up until I left for Boston. And noticed that the tendonitis started to kind of go away, which I was really happy about. And once I started the race on Monday, I was really afraid that I was going to feel that pain the entire time. But luckily, the pain went away immediately after I started, and I only felt it afterwards. So I have DOMS. Those, some of you probably have it as well. Delayed onset muscle soreness. And I took about a week off after Boston so that I didn't do any running at all. I did a little bit of biking, and I think I may have gone on 1 run, but I decided that I wanted to rest, take care of myself, and try to come back, a little bit stronger, because I had the Broad Street run in Philly about 2 weeks after Boston. So I rested, went for a couple runs this past week, and I felt fine. I tested out a new shoe from Swift Running, and it was fantastic. So I'm really happy with it. And decided to, and I was lucky enough to be an ambassador for the Broad Street Run. So I went on Saturday to go film some footage for the expo, and it was really cool. I really liked it. And then Sunday was the race, and I don't know what it is about the Broad Street Run, but I ran it last year, and after mile 3, I literally felt like I was going to throw up after I got to the 5K mark, because the humidity was high. It was like 85% humidity. At the time, I was taking medication that made me not do well at all with the heat. And so I walk ran the rest of the race, almost dropped out at mile 5 because I felt so sick. I didn't throw up or anything, but I just felt so nauseous. And this year, I got to about mile 2.5, and I was like, you know what? This is not a PR race. I'm not going to try to push myself. I'm not going to try to send it. So I walk around the rest of the race after that and finished about 5 minutes slower than I did last year, which kind of frustrated me. But I had a plan A, which was, in A, or plan B was 115. And then plan B was sub 120. And I finished in 120:37, I think. So I technically hit one of my goals, but my tendonitis afterwards came back with a vengeance on the way home. Walking to the car was totally fine. We got in the car, we drove home. We got home. I got out of the car and I couldn't put any pressure on my leg, on my foot. It hurt so bad. There was such a burning feeling and such a stinging feeling whenever I would put pressure on the left side of my foot that I couldn't. So I'm technically walking with a hobble. I am walking on my tiptoe on my left foot and regularly on my right foot. I have my boot that I'm wearing, and it's a struggle right now. Like, I know I'm probably not gonna be able to run for the next week, so I'll be biking a lot more, doing some strength training. I didn't have the greatest race at Boston. I struggled after about mile 19, and I was happy in general that I finished because my training cycle was completely out of whack since December due to medical issues, and then we had Lulu, and so it's just been all over the place. So I'm happy that I finished with the time that I got. A little bit happier that I finished in general because I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, but it wasn't the time that I wanted. And so when I went to Broad Street, I was like, you know what, maybe this will be kind of my redemption race. And once again, it was not what I wanted. I have the Brooklyn Half Marathon in 2 weeks, which by then my body should be fully recovered, one from the marathon and hopefully from this tendonitis. And I'm really afraid of it because the Brooklyn Half is hit or miss. It's either super, super hot or fine. Last year was unique for me because I flew in from Georgia, which is where I was for work for about a week. Flew into New York City, took an Uber that was supposed to take me from JFK over to where you pick up your bib in Brooklyn, which for the last couple of years has just been like a nightmare because of where it's located all the way in downtown Brooklyn along the East River. And on my way to picking up my bib, the Uber got into a car accident, and it was a really powerful car accident. Luckily, I wasn't injured physically, but then I felt fine afterwards. I literally walked off of the highway. The cops blocked the highway for me so I can get off and exit so I could go to the expo. I had my suitcase from work. I had my backpack from work. It was like 80 degrees. I was wearing a suit. It was ridiculous and felt fine for the rest of the day until that night. I would say probably around 11 o'clock at night, I was walking home, or I was walking back to my hotel that I had bought because I decided that I deserved a little treat because of what had happened with the accident, and started to feel really dizzy, got a really bad migraine. I felt like I couldn't stand up and see things properly, and just kind of toss it off to, oh, I have a migraine. That's just what happens to me every once in a while. Took some Tylenol, went to bed. Woke up the next day, felt nauseous and sick still, but decided I pay for this hotel. I'm going to run the race still. I started running the race and I was good until probably mile 2 when we got into Prospect Park. I felt like I was going to die. I was so nauseous. I was so dizzy. I couldn't run for that long or else I felt like I was going to throw up. And I called my wife and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to get to the top of Prospect Park, which is about mile 3 or 4. And I'm just going to keep going and leave the park and DNF. But I got to the top of the park and I was like, let me see how I feel getting back to the bottom of the park. And I got to the bottom of the park and I was like, I'm okay. I ran and decided to run the rest of the race, which is just straight down Ocean Parkway. And I finished in 1:37 or something. I don't remember the time at all, but it was not terrible. I came home, went to the ER, found out I had a concussion, and that was that. I felt better kind of the next day because they gave me some medication and I was able to kind of rest some more. But I remember actually vomiting after my wife picked me up at the train station. I got so sick and so dizzy, and it was awful. So I'm hoping that this year goes a little bit better because I'm not doing that this time. I'm taking Amtrak up. And unless Amtrak gets into some sort of accident with another train, I should be fine going up to New York City and then going to Brooklyn. They changed the spots. It's in Prospect Park, which is so much easier to get to. And I'm excited to pick up my bib. I got a hotel again because I felt like I deserved it after, everything that's been going on. And I'm hoping to do a decent time. I ran the United half in 1:34, which was a huge surprise for me because of everything that had gone wrong with my training. And that was in March. And so I ran probably the first 10 miles. I think most of them were either 7-minute miles or under 7-minute miles. So I was really happy with that. And then I slowed down for the last 3. But for Brooklyn, my PR is I think what I did last year, which was a surprise. But the issue with Brooklyn is it's usually so humid. The race starts really early, and I remember there being fog for the last couple of years as you were running and getting so hot so quickly. I'm not on the medication that can overheat me anymore, so I'm hoping that plays a role in me being okay while I run. But I'm a little nervous going into the Brooklyn half because it's not a difficult course per se. I've run around Prospect Park so many times. I used to live in New York City for 17 years. Prospect Park used to be my best friend when I lived in Brooklyn. But it's the mind games that I'm playing on myself because these last 2 races is extraordinary. And I have, to be perfectly frank, where I have these obsessive thoughts where I start thinking about something and my mind just won't stop thinking about it, fixates on it, and it spins and spins and spins. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on is, I'll zone out. My wife will ask me if I'm okay, but really what I'm thinking about are these races and the future of my running, because I have big goals for Chicago. And I know that's like 4 months away, but it's a struggle to think that you can hit your goal, even though it's that far away, when you've seen, things not work out for you. And I know a lot of people say, you got to rest after Boston. You ran a marathon. It takes like 4 weeks to recover. My body usually recovers after a couple of days fully from a marathon. When I ran New York in 2024, I went for a run the next day. Like I felt fine completely and started my training for Tokyo. I think the race is on November 1st or 2nd. And the next day I was back out there training. So I know that's not going to happen now, but I'm hoping that by the time I run the Brooklyn half, things have kind of calmed down with my body. My tendonitis is gone and my body and Boston is out of my body. And then I have several races lined up for the summer. So I'm hoping that everything is fine with that. But what I'm trying to say is, instead of just complaining about how things went for the last couple of races and the fear that I have, is those of you that have this feeling of dread after finishing a marathon, this sadness, this feeling of emptiness, it is okay to have. Totally okay to have. It is normal. You work for so long to get to this finish line, and especially after you deal with a marathon weekend like Boston, because it's incredible. There's so many wonderful things happening. It's, I think, the longest marathon weekend that you really have, since the race is on a Monday instead of a Sunday. So you get to experience so many shakeout runs. The expo is awesome. Newbury Street turns into like its own expo all by itself with everything that pops up with the companies that show up. You have the finish line that's open, which I don't think is really available for any other World Marathon major. So you get to really experience what it looks like. You have the 5K that's on Saturday that runs across the finish line. Like the entire weekend is just packed full of things. You have the things going on at City Hall, which is for the Fan Fest, which is great. I don't think that I've seen that really at any World Marathon major either. So there's just so many things to do, and you're so pumped up. You're so just full of energy. You're so happy because of not just your training, but because of everything that's going on the weekend. And then the race happens, and then that's it. You wake up on Tuesday, or you finish on Sunday, and you have Sunday night, and you're just like, what do I do now? And I know the answer from a lot of people is you sign up for your next marathon. It's not always the case for other people, but it's okay to have that feeling of emptiness because you work so hard to get there. And whether or not you sign up for another race after you finish Boston is totally up to you. But be proud of what you accomplished, because you did something that only 1% of the population on Earth has been able to complete. But two, you ran the Boston Marathon, which is probably considered the most prestigious marathon in the world and one of the most difficult to get into. Definitely be proud of that. Show off your medal. Show off everything that you bought. Wear all of the merch. Wear that jacket until it tears. And then when it tears, get it fixed and wear it again, because you are an extraordinary, incredible person. And don't let your mind tell you that you're not. This is also a pep talk for myself, and I'm hoping that I listen to myself. But please remember that. And for those of us that start over training for another marathon shortly after running Boston, give yourself grace. As long as you maintain consistency with your training and you just put one foot in front of the other, you will get to whatever goal you have set for that future race that you have. But I'm just going to take it one step at a time. Unfortunately, that one step at a time is going to be half regular foot, half boot. So I'm just going to try to remind myself that this isn't my forever and that I'm going to be okay. And I'm looking forward to when I don't have to wear this boot anymore, because it makes it not just so much easier for me to walk and obviously to run, because I'll be able to, but it makes it easier for me to carry my daughter, because carrying her car seat is a struggle when I'm limping in a boot. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from the folks who help keep this show on the road. And then I'm going to bring in Nadia and we're going to talk about her just incredible story. I cannot wait for you to hear this because when I discovered her on social media, I was like, is this a real person? I cannot believe someone has completed so many races and accomplished so much in her life since she was a child. So sit back, relax, grab whatever you need. We'll be back in a second and then we'll get started with Nadia. This episode is brought to you by Salt Stick. If you've ever bonked at mile 20 wondering what went wrong, the answer is usually electrolytes. Salt Stick replaces what you sweat out with just the sodium, the potassium, the magnesium, the calcium, so your legs keep doing what you have been trained to do, and you don't get those cramps, which I know so many of us are so used to getting. If you use the code MikeRunsMarathons on Salt Stick's website, you'll save 20% off your order. So make sure you go grab a tube of Fast Chews or my favorite, Bonk Breakers at saltstick.com because I guarantee you they will make a world of difference in your training and in your racing. And we are back. So you know the drill. Grab some water, find your stride, and meet me in the conversation. Today's guest is someone I've been so excited to introduce you to. Today's guest is someone who really embodies what it looks like to push your limits and redefine what you're capable of. If you follow Iron Girl Nadia, you'll see more than just running. You'll see strength, you'll see endurance, and a mindset that is built around showing up for hard things. She's not just training for one lane, she is building a version of herself that's standing across the board. What stands out to me is that her journey isn't about chasing perfection, it is about chasing growth and being willing to do the work that comes with it. Her story is absolutely incredible, goes back to when she was a kid, and the amount of things that she's been able to accomplish since her very first marathon up until now is extraordinary, and what she has lined up in the future is even more so, in my opinion. So I'm excited to talk with her about how she's built that mindset, how running fits into everything else that she does, and what she's learned by consistently pushing past her comfort zone. So let me bring in Nadia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, doing great. Just moving along with training for the next goal races and chugging along and balancing life and work and all that good stuff.
Oh, I feel you. I feel you on that. I actually want to start with the question that I ask everybody, which is, how is your training going? I know that you have a lot of things lined up.
Training is going smoothly, as smooth as it can be, given what my goals are. Goal races, I have a Boston Marathon coming up shortly. And then I have the big goal race, which is the Everest Marathon. And so, I mean, with any big goal race that we have, anything that is scary that we're doing for the first time, whether it's your first marathon, a PR, a BQ attempt, or a big adventure, there's always the feeling of, I wish I could do more. I wish I could squeeze in more. I wish my body can take more. So that's kind of where I have the coaching hat, I have the athlete hat on me, and just trying to balance everything that I can. But it's going as smoothly as it could be.
That's good to hear. And you just finished the LA Marathon, right?
I did. So I just finished the LA Marathon with my dad. That was our 28th consecutive LA Marathon. So 28 years in a row. I will say that that is a very difficult streak to keep up. I had put out a poll out there, like just to see kind of what runners streaks have like for races, and it really is hard to just try to keep that up. I mean, we were running LA Marathon in our teens, 20 or my teens, my 20s, 30s, and 40s now. So it's very different once you get older.
Yeah, the most I've done is run New York 5 times. You know, from what you just described, you have been running for a very long time, since you were a teenager. And I want you to take me back to the beginning. So how did running come to you? Was it running that came first, or was it another fitness journey that brought you to running? What got you started with it?
I actually discovered it for three reasons. It was around middle school, those preteen years, and I discovered I had an engine inside of me because my mom had enrolled me into boxing, community boxing, and I did that competitively for 3 years. And this was coming from, I'm a middle child. My older sister and younger brother were pretty athletic as little kids, as parents put them in community sports, and I just couldn't do it. I tried basketball, I tried soccer, I tried any type of coordinated sport, and I couldn't do it. I just not sure what was wrong with me. I was like, if my brother and sister can do it, why is it that I can't? And so I just kind of relied more on my brain and my artistic side and was competitive in arts until when my mom found boxing, and she's like, they're giving a really great deal. I was kind of suffering a little bit with bullying, as many kids do in their preteen years. And she's like, let's put you something where it can kind of develop your self-confidence. And it really did, because I discovered that I had an engine. I immediately jumped into training after school. It was like 3 hours a day after school, 5 days a week. So going from like zero training, zero nothing to 15 hours a week of training and just building that that engine and that skill set, that's where I was like, oh, I can run. I really have this little thing in me. And at the same time, I had watched on TV the Ironman World Championship, and that's what really put in the spark. And I was like, wow, what is this? You know, you swim 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then you run a marathon. I thought it was just unreal that human beings can do that, and they also do it for fun. What really touched my heart was the real stories out there. And Ironman did a really good job to doing a feature every fall, winter season to share the stories outside of the pros. And it was the people that were suffering from loss, from divorce, from anything that was hardship in their life. And they created this goal inside of them and said, I want to be an Ironman. I want to prove to myself that I can compete at this endurance event for this long and see if I can do it. So I literally told myself at 12 years old, I go, I want to do an Ironman one day. So once I started researching and how expensive the sport is, how you have to be 18 at least to do it. So I just chose one of the sports, and I thought that running was going to be the easiest. And again, ignorance is bliss. I just decided that I'm going to do an marathon. And I signed up for my first marathon. And the only one I knew at the time that existed at that time was the LA Marathon. That was 1999. So I signed up when I was 14 years old.
Wow. That is an incredible story. It's so funny being 12 years old and seeing people complete Ironmans and being like, I want to do that at 12. That is a mindset of discipline. And so you have a plethora of things under your belt that you've completed, Ironmans, marathons, what have you. And I'm sure that mentality about why you do these types of races and events has changed. But at what point did you realize that you weren't just exercising, you weren't just working out, but you were building something bigger for yourself?
You know, right from the beginning, the seed was planted because I was inspired of real people sharing their real stories and overcoming hardship. And I mean, we all go through different journeys in our life. And at that time, I saw my parents as my heroes, and I still see them as my heroes. And it hurt me to see them vocalize and think that my mom is one of eight, my dad is one of eight, and the majority of my extended family are overweight or obese. Both of my two grandmothers have passed away from type 2 diabetes. Both of my grandfathers have either passed away from prostate cancer or prostate problems. And so it was almost like we were told and believed, my parents, was that was in our future, and that chronic disease is going to be in our path, and there's no way to avoid it. So I learned everything I could about science. I was always fascinated about the human body and physiology. And I saw these human beings. I go, it doesn't have to be that way. I know that we have power in our own life to make choices, our habits, make choices, like to just transform our lives, whether it's movement every day, it's our food choices, our groceries, all of those things. And I was just exploring this through my sport. It opened up avenues and windows into my own eyes of like, what is possible? And so the passion and the fire really was, how can I transform my life and show that it's possible to help transform my parents' lives and their mindset? And this, again, was happening when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And it just, sport unlocks that in your mind. And if you allow it, if you search for it, if you dig and reflect and push and go into those very uncomfortable places. And so that's where the passion started, and it continues to this day because it is a very empowering, and will throw at you some challenges in your life. It won't be easy. And so when we're going in our 20s, discovering ourselves or establishing our careers in 30s, and, going through different stages, like running and sport can help us process those emotions throughout that time.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I identify with your story because I'm the only person in my family who does anything remotely athletic. Everyone else in my family thinks that I'm insane every time I run a race or run a marathon because they just don't understand it. And to be able to talk to individuals like yourself who understand kind of the fact that it's not just the physical action of running, but what comes with it and what you learn during the training and what you learn from yourself during the race is something that is just indescribable. And to have someone who kind of understood this at such a young age is such an incredible thing to realize when you're, a teenager, because I don't know many kids that age that were probably thinking about Ironmans or you realize that you can't do an Ironman until you're 18, so you sign up for a marathon, thinking that is easier. And so you talked about kind of a couple different things of what helped you get into this, watching the Ironman, seeing the real stories, realizing from looking at your own family, it doesn't have to be like this with what they've gone through for me, and then I can show other people and now you push yourself to, in my opinion, essentially the limits, and you continue to push them, and it shows people that your limits are not what you think they are. But what drew you towards pushing your limits physically, just continuously to keep going and finding new things to challenge?
Well, as a child, I had told myself, I wrote these goals down. I told myself, I want to find and explore what is the extraordinary version of myself. Because I knew early on, and I recognized early on that I'm not going to be the fastest. I'm not going to be the strongest. I'm not going to be the prettiest. I'm not going to be the most financially wealthiest. I'm not going to be, there is like always the top number one. And it's like, that's where you were saying, like, I'm not aiming for perfection. And it is true because it's just that self reflection and recognizing that there are somebody out there who is number one, but may or may not be me. And at least though, I can pursue and create an extraordinary version of myself. And whatever that means, I want to pursue that. So human body, the human mind is just, it thrives in growth. It thrives in searching. It thrives in exploration. And I just, again, I learned that early on. And I think a lot of the wisdom that I just acquired so early was because I read books like you wouldn't believe. I read and read and read. I was always in the library. And I learned early on is that you can learn so much from others because it's almost like a cheat code. If you read autobiographies, if you read biographies, they're telling you their ups and downs, and they're telling you like how they got to a certain way, and you can then apply and pick and choose like what do you want to apply into your life, what will work in your life. And so this is pre-social media, pre like having a personal computer at home, or pre like the internet being available with everyone. So it was just learning from others and learning and how that I can apply that to myself, and having loving and nurturing and disciplined parents that were very strict with me as well. My dad was extremely tough on me, but I needed that. I think it's very important to have that, and allowed me to just push myself and discover and explore myself, explore that extraordinary version of myself to find what is possible, what can I pursue. And I think also just understanding that we evolve as human beings and we evolve in our life, and so it's important to evolve those goals in order to keep that fire alive, because sometimes life will really smack us and with some challenges, and so it'll test us, and that's the time where you dig deeper. You dig deep of like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and what do I want to do with this struggle, and what is it teaching me about myself. So I think endurance sports and running has really allowed me to kind of just self reflect quite a bit throughout my life. Well, I think sport and running teaches a certain skill set, and that skill set of discipline, focus, persistence, resist it, like resiliency, all of those skills that you learn to be just to better yourself translates well in life. And that's kind of why I have wanted to become a lifelong runner. So even since a little girl, I said I wanted to be extraordinary. And I also decided and set that goal is like, I want to run for the rest of my life. So what does that mean to me? And how am I going to evolve that without knowing, like, what is it going to feel like to be in my 20s, 30s, and 40s and beyond? I created those goals just to explore that. So I think the skills that we're learning in our sport are very, very transferable, and it helps us just be disciplined, be focused, be resilient, and just be a fighter.
You actually just segued into my next question, which is great, because I'm actually going to be 40 next year, and I've thought about this consistently, and I'm glad that you brought it up. But how has becoming stronger physically changed the way that you approach running now, from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s?
Definitely being an athlete and competing in different decades of my life has allowed me to explore what does strong mean? What does strong mean for me? Because it is very, very easy to compare ourselves with other people who are our same age, our same gender, or maybe who have the same number of years of experience. But in reality, that's it. Like you've probably heard it before. Comparison is the thief of joy. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves. It's great to find inspiration and to create aspirations within ourselves from what others are doing. That's very important. But the moment that you don't focus on your own personal journey of like, what does extraordinary mean to me? What does strong mean to me? It does rob you from the joy that you have in your own path. I think that's very important for us to just find what is the value that's in my life. I have a lot of value. I have a lot to give. I have a lot to be thankful for. I have a lot to focus on, where I can focus on my strengths or focus on my weaknesses. And so that's where focusing on how can I be the strong version of myself at age 40, at age 50, 60, 70, 80. And that also goes for like backwards, like 30 and 20. So like I was exploring that then because ignorance is bliss. And when I was 20, I didn't know what it was going to feel like to be 30. I didn't know what it felt like to be 40. And I don't know what it's going to feel like to be 50, 60. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't ask other 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, but that it's not going to be the same within myself. So what a 50-year-old going to feel at is probably going to be very different from what I feel because my journey, what I have shaped myself to this day is very different from them. So it's really important to just do a lot of self-reflection and taking that time to find the joy and recognizing what I have accomplished, your personal accomplishments. What are the things that you're really good at? What are the things that you have in your life that really give you joy and light and fire? And fundamentally, it's always love. It's always our family. It's our parents, our children, our pets. Those are the things that even when those last moments of life, we reflect on and it's like, I wish I had just a little bit more time, but those are the meaningful things in our lives. It's not tangible things. It's not materialistic things. Those are things that are important. And we should, of course, have like a roof over our head and food and the basic necessities, but really, really find the gratitude in the little things that we have. And that allows us to then pour more into our cup because the more we have in our cup, the more we have to pour into others. And so that's how I approach my athletes and my coaching philosophy as well, is to teach others. The majority of my clients and majority of my athletes are in their 40s, 50s, and then I have my next set is 30s and 60s, because it is literally exploring that question of what is the strongest version of you right now in this year today, because we can explore that. It doesn't matter if you're not in your 20s. It doesn't matter like if you're in your 70s. We could be functional, we could be mobile, we could be thriving and not be dependent like that. Those are beautiful goals to have. So as I help my athletes discover that for themselves, I am continuously always discovering that for myself for every year of my life, because every year brings on new discoveries within yourself.
Cannot express how much I identify with so many of the different things that you just said. Starting with the comparison portion, I mean, I cannot tell you when I first started running, I refused to run outside because I thought that I was going to be judged and compared to all the other people that were running around me. I lived in New York City at the time, so I was afraid to run in Central Park. I was afraid to run in Prospect Park because I was thinking, oh, people are going to look at me. They're going to judge me because I was much heavier than I am now. So I thought that they were going to just take one look at me and be like, this guy's not a runner. And so I didn't run outside for probably the first 5-ish months. I ran on the treadmill in a gym. And finally, when I did decide to run outside, I realized nobody is looking at me. They're all focused on themselves and getting better themselves. But now with the advent of social media, oh my goodness, the amount of comparison that you can do in just probably about 30 seconds just by scrolling is just, it's insane. And the amount of things that I see online for myself that make me judge and compare myself to other people is ridiculous. And for those individuals that are thinking about getting into running or are just brand new runners that are seeing all these posts about people running sub-3 marathons, running 6 5-minute miles, all of these endurance sports are immediately jumping into a marathon, things like that, they could be very put off when they try to do that and then realize that they can't do it because of just their own endurance levels and things like that they have to build up, and not knowing that where those individuals started from is where they are right now. And that's not really talked about a lot. So I'm really glad that you point out to your coachees that we can make you the best that you are right now. Don't think about how you were when you were younger, because I beat myself all the time. I didn't start running until I was 31. And I was like, if I had started running in my 20s, I can only imagine what I would be like now. And so to be able to have this kind of grounding of let's focus on now, let's focus on today, and see what we can do to make you the best runner you can be right now. Instead of looking at all this noise is wonderful and much needed in this sport, especially with the way that things are kind of portrayed now with all the running influencers that we have online. And you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about your decision, of being a runner, an endurance athlete, and working through your strength and things like that. And you brought up discipline. And this happens to all runners. It doesn't matter how many years you've been running, whether it's 50 years or 5 years. What does discipline look like on the days where the motivation isn't there? You do a lot of races, you do a lot of endurance events. I'm sure you have those days where the motivation just isn't there for you. How do you get yourself up to go and do it?
Two things. One is reminding myself all the little things matter. All the little things, whether it's good or bad. because sometimes when we think about our big goals, they look so big that we're just like, you know what, I'm just going to skip training today, or I'm going to skip training for a few days, or I'm going to skip training for a week, or I'm going to start next season, I'm going to start next year. If we keep looking at the big picture and not looking at the small impact that we can make with the little things, I think that's where a discipline can really fall. But if you remind yourself it's the little things that really matter, it helps you create the skill of discipline, because being disciplined is a skill and you have to practice it. You have to apply it. And if you can make those steps that you're about to make smaller and more manageable and more like edible, then it makes it a little bit easier to start and to keep going. Because all of us as runners or endurance athletes, we know that it is the hardest to get out the door. Really, no matter whatever your goals are or whatever your motivations are, or how fired up you were when you set your goals, getting out the door on those tough days, after a long work day, after an emotional day, after a fight, after something, it's getting out the door. And once you get out the door, if you just tell yourself, I'm going to go walk for 10 minutes, or I'm going to go run for 10 minutes and see where I'm going to feel at that point, and then commit, they just go out. And then it's like, you know what? That was the hardest part. And then it just starts to flow. And it happens to me, even though I've been competing for 29 years now, it still happens to me. And I have to remind myself, like, the little things, the little things. And then might sound contradictory, but the second thing is really looking at the big thing, the big macro goal, and reminding yourself of that powerful why. We do hear that very often now, of why you have to find your why, you have to explore your why. But once we have it, that's not enough. You also have to remind yourself during these tough times. And the power of repetition, the power of creating thoughts and repeating those thoughts, the power of writing something down and putting it somewhere where it's visible, where you are more accountable for yourself. Those are the small steps that you can create in order to just be disciplined. Again, it's not easy, and it's not easy when you are to start anything new, especially as adults. It's very hard, very, very hard, whether it's a new sport, a new goal for running. Even if you want to like learn finance, learn real estate, learn like go purchase your first home, you want to do something new for the first time, it's very scary. So we have to look at the big, create the reason why we want to do that, remind ourselves often, but most importantly is to remind yourself the little things matter each day. And that's how we create the skill of discipline and also practice it.
Absolutely. I always tell everybody that we see in movies and in TV shows that there's just one day where everything completely changes for somebody. And what I tell people is it's usually you do, get 1% better every single day. You do one little thing that cascades and builds up and up and up. And that leads to the big aha moment and the big change that you're looking for, and the growth that you look back from where you were 6 months ago to today, and you don't realize, oh my goodness, how much I've grown, versus, what could have happened or what didn't happen if you had waited and said, I'm going to start next year. I think that that's one of the worst phrases that you can use when it comes to trying something new is I'm scared, or I'll start later. Because then what ends up happening is, as you pointed out earlier, you want to fill your life with experiences. You want to fill your life with these moments that you can remember and that you can hold on to, because like you said, the tangible things in life, they don't matter. They're not going to be there forever. But those moments, those thoughts, those memories, they will be there, and you can be proud of yourself, and you can feel like you had a life fulfilled. And if you keep trying to put something off like that, it's going to eventually eat away at you, and you're not going to feel like you had a life that had as many things as you could have possibly done, which is what got me into running. Now, with the amount of endurance sport events you've done, marathons, Ironmans, things like that, was there a moment in your training where you felt like you wanted to quit, but you didn't? And if so, what got you through that?
I've had several moments where I've wanted to quit, several, and I'm not immune to it at all. But again, going back to remembering my why, and remembering the little things matter, and remembering when I also reflecting like on my dark times, reflecting on injuries, reflecting on times in my life where maybe wasn't able to be committed to my training as much, and I really wished I would have. Maybe remembering when I was injured and I really wish I could have been running and training, helping myself remind myself of my own personal experiences allows me to find that gratitude in this moment. It's like I have the opportunity to go train right now. I have the gift to go move right now. It is a gift to move. And so I want to capitalize on this opportunity and get out the door. And so those are the things that help remind me to get out of my own personal tough moments, because I have them. I mean, there's been plenty of training sessions where I've cried. I've had to release. It's a moment of release. It's a moment of releasing the emotions of whatever I'm going through in life. And movement has that power for us. And I have to remind myself, like, you will feel better once it gets done, and you will feel better during. So get yourself out the door, because you remember how it feels not to be able to run, or to be injured, or to be in a tough, really dark spot in your life, and not being able to have the privilege to run, because it is a privilege to be able to do our sport for fun and to do this for a hobby. And so I think reminding ourselves of that during those hard times, it's important.
One of my favorite signs that I see during marathons is there may come a time where you may not be able to run, but today is not that day. And I'm
Yes.
reminded of the privilege that we have to be able to run, because we might not always get to. There might be something that happens to us, or either physically or something that pulls us away from it. And to be able to do it right now in the prime of our lives when we're healthy is a gift. And just the ability to move our own feet is something that we sometimes take for granted, and let alone be able to run a 5K, 10K, marathon, ultra marathon, what have you. And I think that what you said is just perfect for expressing that no one, no matter how much experience you have, is immune from that feeling of, I don't want to do this anymore. Because I cannot tell you how many times that's come up with me, not only during my training, but during my races. And then kind of on the flip side of that, how do you push yourself, obviously, to these limits, but how do you personally define pushing yourself without hitting that burnout? Because I know that probably is something that's, I would assume, on your mind all the time.
Two things also. One, I have experienced burnout a few times throughout the last 29 years of racing, and I'm not immune to that either. And so, like, thankfully now I don't really get the burnout, because I think my body, through aging of racing for 29 years, kind of puts me in check already. But I definitely have gotten and burnout in my 20s, because I felt like I was a warrior and could do everything and anything. And honestly, when I look back at it, 20s were a wonderful decade, definitely a wonderful decade to be an athlete. And I wish I could go back to it. And when you were mentioning about comparing your younger version of yourself, it, again, we're all guilty of it. We can think of that time, but definitely, like, just pushing myself is a beautiful feeling. I think it's a gift. Again, it's a gift to move and to evolve. It also comes with evolving my goals. So even though I've been racing for 29 years, my running goals have changed throughout each season, throughout each period of my life. Like in my teens, it was all about the short distances, about cross country and track. And I ran LA Marathon just kind of for fun every year. And then in grad school and undergrad, again, I wasn't now a competitive athlete. I chose not to be a collegiate athlete, because I knew I wasn't going to be that top 1% to go professional and run a 225 marathon for a woman. So I was like, I want to run for the rest of my life. And so I rather invest in my career first. And so my goals changed again. That kept it exciting, because then at that point I was like, I feel happy that I can go run the perimeter around UCLA for 4 miles during a study break. And then when I finished, that's when my goals evolved again, where it still made it exciting. I'm like, now I want to pursue my Ironman goals. So for my 20s after grad school is where I started doing the triathlon training and getting excited and fired up, and a lot of emotions, and achieving those goals. Then after, like, I went into a different phase of my life, a career change, a life change, setback, a loss, making that transition, like going to 30. That's when I was like, I'm going to move into ultras. And I felt like I needed that time to just cry it out in the mountains. I needed that time to feel the pain of enduring, of going that distance and doing stage races and doing the hardest things I could feel like I could do at the moment, while I was processing emotions at the same time. So that's my running and my goals, and my addiction basically to endurance sports has evolved throughout my life, because of whatever I'm going through in my life. If it's a good time, if it's a bad time, if it's just you're going through the motions, like whatever it is. And I went through the ultra phase for a few years, and it wasn't until, like, again, all throughout this, I was still racing marathons, and almost marathons were like for fun, until finally where I felt like I almost ended my career in running. I felt like I had a bone injury that, and almost about to end everything. And then also during COVID, and I didn't have any outlet. I didn't have any resources. I didn't have any connection. I lost my business. I lost a lot aside from my business. And it was such a dark time. It's such a difficult time, especially when I was robbed of everything. I felt I was stripped of everything. And so it was self-exploration at that time. Like, how am I going to rebuild? And how am I going to rebuild myself emotionally, mentally, physically? And it was from the moment of 2021 and till now of rebuilding myself, and really finding a gift of running again, and the love of running again, and being so grateful to run again. I mean, I went for 8 months not being able to run. I literally walked my fitness and did prehab because I was on a list. I had basically got a bucket handle tear, meniscus tear on my right knee, and that happened in January 2021. And so I was put on a non-essential, quote unquote, non-essential list of surgeries. And at that time, if you remember, there was a backlog of surgeries. So because I was considered non-essential, they're like, we don't know when we're going to be able to put you in, but when we can, we'll call you. And it's like, okay. So with my physical therapist, Nori, and we were just working for 8 months, walking and then prehab until the point where in the fall of 2021 is where you probably remember all the major marathons started to come up and the bigger races. And that's where Boston Marathon was in the fall, LA Marathon was in the fall. And those are the two streaks that I've kind of kept up. And I was like, well, I've been doing so much prehab and walk training and also hiking. And my PT's like, if you want to start it, just walk it or jog it and see where you go from there. I was like, okay, let's try it out. And when you have this fire of emotion and desire, sometimes you will amaze yourself what you could do physically. And I was able to do those 2 marathons with still the bucket handle tear and do them almost pain free. And I was like, wow, I could run again. I was ecstatic and I felt reborn again. So that's where I was rebuilding. So this is where my marathon phase came up. I was like, I want to do everything I could now to just focus on the marathon because I thought my running career was over. And that was basically the last 5 years that I've been just focusing because now my body doesn't recover the same. It really does change. I mean, I felt my body changing at 30. I felt my body changing at 35. And because I was going through all the stresses and during like just isolation and COVID, it went even through more changes and struggles. And so it was just a huge feel of relief that I could run. And so now I find so much gratitude in it now. I'm like, each time I run like a 3 mile, 4 mile, I'm ecstatic. I'm happy because I know what it felt like to not be able to do it and potentially think that I would never be able to do it for the rest of my life. That was because that was a childhood goal. That was one of my childhood dreams. I was like, I want to run for the rest of my life. So it scares me. I'm sorry, it scares me to think of the day when I won't be able to run. And I think that's why I find so much gratitude in having the opportunity to be able to run and make a choice to run today.
I completely agree with you. I think about sometimes the day where I might not be able to run, and I joke with my wife all the time. She says, "What if you can't use your legs?" I said, "Then I'll get robot legs or a wheelchair. I don't care. I'm going to do something because I can't picture my life now without this sport in some capacity." And I want to know what the biggest moment that you've had where you said, I didn't think I could do that. Whether it's a marathon, an ultra, another endurance event, an Ironman. What comes to mind is kind of like the biggest moment where that thought popped into your head when you finished it?
For sure, my first Ironman. I think because it was my childhood goal, and it's the whole reason why this whole journey started. It was because I wanted to do an Ironman, so I signed up for my first race. I signed up for my first marathon. I went through the process of making sure I took care of my career, my professional development first, and then I went for after the Ironman. Through that journey from it was around age 25, 26, where I started doing like sprint and Olympic and just building up and reading all the books at that point, like doing whatever I could to teach myself and how to properly prepare and putting in the hours and a lot of crying. I remember was happening at that time, just that self-doubt, like, can I do this? What am I doing? These people have these 15, $10,000 bikes. These people have like six figures. I was a teacher at the time. I go 6 figures on their resume. The numbers are just so different. And I go, and they have all these resources and I don't. And they go, I'm just going to be a workhorse. I'm going to put the time in as much as I could to prove to myself that I can do this as a teacher. I can do this coming from a humble background, from an immigrant background. And as a woman, as a Latina, so I was reminding myself of, yes, I do have maybe perhaps these disadvantages, but that gave me more power, more empowerment to say, I will work at it. And the biggest thing I think that really made that one um, more meaningful, and aside from it being my childhood goal and my childhood dream, was right before a couple months before my race. I did the Ironman Sonoma in Sonoma County. It was called Vineman at the time. My dad got diagnosed with cancer. So this was in 2010, and he got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And we were very distraught because he was still in his like mid 50s. He was to me, and to think that now and to that then and now, it's like he was too young. Like, I don't want to lose my father. I don't want to lose my best friend. I don't want to lose my hero. And I just said, you know what, whatever it takes, I'm going to, it was summer at the time. I'm going to take a break from work. I'm going to stop training. I'm going to be there for my dad, be there for my family, be there for my mom if she's going through it, like as well, that heartbreak. But my dad said something very powerful to me. And he's like, Mija, this is your goal. This is your dream. I am going to be there at your finish line. I'm going to be there. And by him saying that, he was saying that he was going to fight this cancer. Not only fight it, but he was going to beat it. And how can someone say that when they're so probably afraid inside and not know the answer? Because I knew he didn't know the answer. He knows he doesn't know the answer, but that doesn't matter. He was committed mentally to beat it. And it's like, if you can be committed to beating cancer, I can be committed to achieving this goal because even though I can't see the future, I'm going to do it no matter how scared I am. And that's why it became so meaningful because he went to that finish line. He beat cancer. He fought cancer. And when I crossed the finish line to my first Ironman, I ran to his arms and it was like, you did it. Like I told my dad, like, you did it. Like you did this. You beat cancer. And I'm here because of you, because you believed in yourself. I believed in you. You believed in me. And I think that's what the power of love does.
I have chills and goosebumps right now just thinking about that because that is so powerful. Wow, I can only imagine the emotions that were just like everywhere at that finish line. You started young at around 12 of saying I'm gonna run an Ironman. I'm gonna do all of these things. I started running marathons when I was a teenager. You've had these big goals that you've accomplished and that you've gone after, and that you've not been afraid to back down from. But is there something that comes to mind that you are capable of now that you would have been intimidated about at the start?
Climbing mountains at a pretty aggressive pace. I will say during my ultra phase, I realized how much of a mountain goat I was and is, I guess. I was really good of running mountains. Here in Southern California, we are blessed with certain, like if you take an hour drive and you can climb 8K, 9K, 10K summits and they're beautiful. You're in a remote place and we are blessed in the area. We don't have very many 14ers. We only have a couple in mid and Northern California, but at least we have quite a bit of playground around here in Southern California if you just go take the drive. So that's where I discovered, I was like, I can really run up these. And that's where I was like, I love, and then being competitive from the road space and being from cross country and track, where you're short distances and you're competitive for pace and aggressiveness and going into that threshold place. I was like applying it to the mountains. And that's where I was like, this is special. I love the trails. I love the mountains. I love the feeling. And I realized that when I got above like 12K, 13,000 feet altitude, where people start to really break down, like I can push harder. I don't know what it is and what it is. Like, I mean, I've gotten tons of blood work done and there's nothing out of the ordinary. There's nothing special in my blood. Like maybe I mean, my ferritin levels are normal. My hemoglobin's normal. Everything's normal, but I can push harder when it's up there, when people are limited in their oxygen availability. And so that's where allowed me, like, I love this feeling. And you do get a feeling of highness, but it's almost when you are limited in oxygen and your brain starts to think a little differently and process things a little differently, and your body starts to slow down and your lungs start to be on fire, your legs start to be on fire. But that's where I feel alive. I really do feel alive. And that opened up the door of like, I do want to climb more mountains. I want to see the world in different places. And that's where uh, I ended up doing Kilimanjaro last year. It's been a goal that was a goal in my mind for over a decade. And I didn't focus on it. That was the problem. And it wasn't until COVID when I thought I couldn't run anymore. And then I started running and then I did road marathons and racing road marathons. And I was like, let's get back into the mountains. Let's get back into the trails and see if you could wake up your mountain legs again that you had in your early 30s. And they were there and my lungs were there and the spirit, of course, is there. So that's why I went after that goal last year and I wanted to climb Kilimanjaro. But I never like to do things the same as everybody else. The most people that climb Kilimanjaro do it anywhere between 6 to 8 days. I think it's around 30 to 40,000 people who attempt every year, and it's only about 60% success rate. For me, I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to do it in a day. Why? I just told myself I want to climb it in a day. And I always wanted to do it in a day. This goal wasn't born last year. It was born a decade ago. And I did the research and I saw that some of the top of the ultra runners in the world have done it in a day. Like if it's physically possible in them, I know I could do it. I know I could do it. And that's where the determination was. I'm going to prepare my mind because I don't have the physical ability to go run 14ers around here in Southern California very easily to get the proper training to do that. I don't live in Colorado. That's kind of our nearest ones where you have 14ers all around you. So I did what I could to prepare physically, but I did a lot more mentally to prepare. And I was very fortunate to come out of there successfully, safely, but most importantly. But to do it, I summited Kilimanjaro in 17 hours. So that was quite the feat. And I don't think a lot of locals that were there, a lot of mountain guides, even the government, when I was getting my visa there, they're like, you're going to climb it in a day. Yeah, right. I mean, even when I was climbing it and passing all the campsites and all the checkpoints, each of the guides that were there, like with their groups, are like, you're doing it in a day? Like, what? And I just kept going and kept going each checkpoint. So it was a very special experience.
More power to you, because I am deathly afraid of heights. And I've climbed, I mean, I'm on the East Coast, so when we say mountains for you guys, it's probably like hills. But I've climbed, a few small things here, and just standing on the edge of a cliff terrifies me. So I give anybody who climbs mountains, does trail running, and climbs those high mountains with UTMB, what have you, it's you guys are a different beast. I can't even imagine climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in a day. Wow. I was expecting you to be like 3 days instead of 6 days, but a day. Damn, that is insane. Now, I want to take a step back and go kind of back to the beginning, to put on our beginner shoes. And we talked about this a little bit earlier with the comparisons and the judgments that we see from other people and ourselves. If there's somebody that feels like they're not strong enough or fast enough, or they don't think that they're built for this kind of sport, whether it's Ironmans or marathons or ultra marathons, what would you want them to hear?
The small steps matter. And we all started with small steps. All of us, all of us. We all learned how to walk with those first few steps, and we didn't succeed with those first few steps. It took a lot of failure. We had to crawl, and we had to try again and again and again in order to be able to walk. And so when we want to start this running journey, all of us had to start with those first few steps. And sometimes we don't see the beginning journeys of people who maybe are outwardly very successful in it, but just reminding ourselves, like, this is my journey, and I know that small steps will count, and I want to start with small steps every day.
Now, on the flip side of that, if you could go back to Nadia, 12 years old, seeing these Ironman championships, seeing the stories of these individuals, thinking about wanting to get started with this and then running their first marathon, if you could give yourself one piece of advice back then, what would it be?
Keep going, because it's going to be all worth it.
Tell me more.
I think a lot of times, all of us, we live with certain regrets in our lives. A lot of us live with comparing ourselves to a younger version of ourselves and say, what if I had done something differently? And it's very easy to think of that, but we have to remind ourselves, like, we are who we are because of all of our experiences, good and bad. They have shaped us who we are. We are resilient and strong in who we are because we struggled. Struggle leads to growth. Struggle forces us to find that stronger version of ourselves to come out on the other side. And I know struggle and dark times hurt. They are hard. But on the other side, when you go through it and you come out the other side, you look back, you're like, wow, look who I became. Look what I did. This is why things that make us suffer are so impactful. Whether it's going for your first sub 3, going for your first beat, having your first child. This is, again, we associate pain, pleasure, and accomplishment, all that's together. And that's why giving birth is so powerful for moms, because it's an extreme release of pain and connection that only mothers understand, and they describe it, and it's so vivid, even though we all forget the pain, but that memory of it is so empowering, and we become stronger because of that.
I love that. It's funny, actually. My wife, we just had a baby 2 months ago, and she tells me consistently that she doesn't remember the event. She says she blacked out, and I keep telling her I remember every moment of it, and I will tell her the whole story, and she'll be like, "Oh, that happened? I don't remember that." But she remembers when we saw that baby for the first time, and be a moment that neither of us will ever forget. But yes, keep going and don't quit before the miracle happens is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever learned in this sport in general, because of what the sport can give you back as long as you just continue to try to make progress one day at a time. This next section that I have is called the hot seat. So these are just quick rapid fire questions that don't think, answers off the top of your head. Don't think too hard about them, just to gauge kind of who you are as a runner. So let's start with our first one, which is trail or road.
Trail.
What is your favorite running shoe brand right now?
Ooh, it's a hard one. To race, I would say the Alpha Fly. To train in, 361 in Hoka. That's a hard one. Like there's so many good ones out there.
Oh, I feel you on that. I have two shoe racks that are just completely filled with shoes that my wife hates me about because I can't pick one that I like. Are you an early alarm or a late night runner?
I am not an early alarm. I am opposed to alarms. I am any time I can squeeze it in at this point. I do work for myself, and so I do have that luxury now to be able to run at any time.
I love that answer. I wish that I could give that answer. But I also hate waking up early, so that would answer my give you my answer right now. Now, for your long runs, do you prefer to run them solo or with others?
That's hard. Solo, I probably do about 95% of my training solo. And I feel there's a lot of growth that can happen and potential there. Training partners help tremendously, help you dig into places that you probably don't, you can't alone. So they are very important. Even like community runs are very helpful. But I think it's very important to learn to train alone and you find a very different part of yourself.
Absolutely. My best friend and I helped train each other in 2024, and because of that, we both hit massive PRs by the end of the year for our fall marathons. And I don't think, at least for me, I don't think I would have been able to do it without his support and without his pushing me to continue to grow. So I completely agree with you on that. Now, for your marathons, what is your favorite post marathon meal?
I love food. That's another one that's really, really hard. I think what's easy is probably I eat a lot. I mean, you can ask my husband. He knows like I eat probably more than him. I mean, that's just the endurance person in me. So anything you could put in front of me now at this point that with the slower metabolism and getting older is just trying to eat as wholesomely as possible. But mariscos come to mind. Unfortunately, I love fries and a burger just sounds so scrumptious. So those are kind of like that come into mind.
What did you get after the LA marathon?
This past one.
Yeah.
The LA Marathon. Yeah, actually, my dad and Tony and I, we went to go get Peruvian, actually, and I got mariscos. Oh yeah, so I got mariscos. Yeah,
Nice. Awesome.
Peruvian food. They're really good at making marisco dishes. So delicious.
I used to have a Peruvian place that was by my apartment in New York City when I lived in Queens, and I loved it. And I knew it was authentic because the girl I was dating at the time, her dad was in the Marines, or not in the Marines, he was in the Army, and he had spent a lot of time down in Peru. And so when we went there and we had food with him, that was the test, and he was like, I approve of this place. Now, for your easy runs, do you prefer music, podcast, or silence?
That's a hard one. I'm really mixed. I'm like a merengue person. I love merengue because it makes me happy. So even if it is an easy run, I'll listen to my merengue and just puts myself in a really good mood. If it's a longer easy run, it's definitely podcasts. I listen to quite a bit of books, of podcasts, of autobiographies. That's where my learning comes in a lot.
Yeah, I discovered audiobooks about 2 years ago because I used to think that I couldn't run without anything but music. But once I started to do that, my heart rate came down. During my easy runs, I didn't run as hard, and I realized that they really relax me when I'm running. Now, obviously, I don't listen to things like the murder podcasts and the true crime things, so that keeps my heart rate down. But yeah, those things have very much helped me in my zone 2 easy runs. Now, what is one piece of running gear that you can't live without, and you can't say your shoes?
I can't live without. I know, man, these are kind of hard. I don't know why. Like they're supposed to be simple. It just depends. Like if I'm running at night, my headlamp. If I'm running during the day, it's got to be a hat. I have to have some protection. Everyone knows me as running in long sleeve and a hat. And again, because I've been racing for 29 years, I'm really good about just protecting my sun, and aging gracefully is very important. And skincare is very important. And so that comes with sun protection.
Okay, no, those are perfect answers. Now, what is your dream race?
My dream
Or
race?
if you have a
I'm going to
dream
go do it. I am going to go do my dream race this in a couple months. Is my hope is to again do it safely and successfully as the Everest Marathon. Another dream race that I do have is the Antarctica Marathon. I want to see the most remote places in the world. I want to just experience it and just step where not very many people have stepped.
Antarctica is a huge goal of mine too. It's just so damn expensive.
Yeah, I know.
Now, if you could run the Everest Marathon, for example, with anyone, living or dead, who would it be?
My dad. My
I
dad.
thought you were going
I
to say
think
that.
I think it hurts because like I can't take him this time. It's just logistically, it's really complicated and it's really long and it's really expensive and it's just that's I wish I can bring my dad along with me. But you know what? He's going to be with me. He's going to be in my heart. I know he believes in me, and when I get to that starting line and get to that finish line, it will be very special.
Absolutely. He'll be there right here in spirit too, which is, I lost my grandma in 2023, and she was my biggest running supporter. And I run all my marathons now with her mask card, either like in my hat or in my shorts, and I always picture her with me, start line all the way to the finish line. So I know exactly how you feel with that. And you kind of answered my last question, but I want to see if there's anything else that you have on top of that. But what is next for you
Like me after Everest? Well,
after ever? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the only reason I found like the Kilimanjaro Summit and the Kilimanjaro Marathon, the Everest Marathon is because I think it was about 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit more than 10 years ago. I used to browse all the blogs and all the Substacks and all the articles online of what are the top 10 hardest marathons. Top 10. Like I want to and everybody has their different opinions and everybody has like what they will rank and what they will. And I'm not talking about like hottest or coldest or ultras. Like I just want to see and I compare and contrast. Like what do I want to do now? Even though these are your opinions that you're sharing that, so that's kind of what I almost have a to-do list. I want to see those places and experience them, and hopefully when I can bring my father along, and when my husband can, he can come along too, because I am very grateful that the two most important men in my life, they also run and they also understand this language that I follow, and they love it too. They're just as passionate about it and they follow their own journey. And when we get to run together, it's very special. The next one is potentially Jungfru Marathon. It is stated as the most beautiful marathon in the world. It's right around my birthday. And so if I can squeeze it in this year, that would be great. If I can't, that's okay. I'll look at it next year. So it's in Switzerland.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Best of luck with the Everest Marathon. I can only imagine how difficult that probably is going to be. Now, these next two questions are just information that I gather from everybody that I interview. The first is, if you could pick a quote, a mantra, or a line that gets you through the tough miles, what would it be?
Never give up, never give in, give it all you got.
That's short, sweet, and simple, and very direct. Now, I want to picture you at the Everest Marathon in a couple months. You're crossing the finish line. You can see it in the distance. Obviously, it's beautiful all around you. What song would be blasting through your headphones as you cross that finish line?
Eye of the Tiger. I'm a huge Rocky fan. Eye of the Tiger.
Have you done Philly before? The marathon?
Have I done which one? Philly. Oh,
The Philly
yes,
Marathon?
I did. Yeah, I did. It was actually in 2010 or 2009, and it was beautiful, beautiful. And I did, of course, the steps, and I did the whole arms above the head. It's just I grew up with those movies. I definitely still find
Oh,
inspiration then, and I still find inspiration now. I mean, I'll pop it in just clips to get myself going. That's another way I kind of get the heart going.
yeah, there's some great quotes from those movies. Now, before we wrap up, I want to bring us back to the heart of what this podcast is really about, what running really means to you. The first question is, what has running given you that you didn't expect when you first started?
Empowerment and the belief in myself. I didn't realize when I crossed that first finish line is that I felt like I could do anything. And now people say it very often, and you really do feel that feeling, and it translates to other areas of your life. Like I can do anything. And it's that first one that becomes so special, so special. And it's not just the first marathon. It could be your first 5K, your first half marathon, your first ultra, your first like just all those first moments are very, very, very special.
I completely agree with you. My life changed in so many different ways after I ran my first marathon. I feel like I became almost a different person because of what I learned and how much I realized the limits that I set for myself were meant to be broken. And then my last question, I know this is very broad, so this might be a difficult question to kind of try to answer as much as you can, but why do you run?
To feel alive because I can, and because it's a gift. I truly, truly feel alive each time I get to move my body. And it reminds me that I am alive, and it reminds me that it's a gift.
I love that. No, you're absolutely correct. Movement is everything, especially in this type of sport that we do. So I 100% agree with that statement. But Nadia, those are actually all the questions that I had for you today. I really want to thank you for this conversation that we had. What really stands out for me is the way that you've built strength, not just physically, but mentally, because by continuing to show up and take on things that challenge you, it's a way to remind ourselves that growth doesn't come from just staying comfortable, and that it comes from leaning into what's hard and seeing what's on the other side of it. And if you're listening and you're not already following her username is Iron Girl Nadia. So make sure you go and check her out. Her profile and her posts are incredibly inspirational. Her story is just wonderful and inspirational for anyone of any background, experience level of running. So make sure to definitely check it out. Her journey is a really powerful example of what's possible when you commit to doing the work and for trusting the process. So Nadia, I really want to thank you again for jumping on and taking the time to speak with me. And best of luck in Everest.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Again, I want to thank Nadia for joining me today on At Your Own Pace. Her story of resilience and perseverance starting from such a young age is just flat out incredible. The things that she's been able to accomplish since she ran her first marathon as a teenager all the way up to now with the Everest Marathon coming up in a few months and with Boston coming up in 2 weeks is something that I think so many people can identify with. Not just because of the types of events that she does, but also because of how much resilience and hard work she puts into accomplishing these goals. Because it is no easy feat to not only run a marathon, but to run these types of endurance events, Ironmans, the most difficult races around the world, that I think so many people can really learn not just what running is all about, but what we learn from the sport besides becoming physically fit or becoming more active. And that's our cool down for the week. I want to thank you so much for spending part of your run, your drive, or your walk with me, or however you listen to this podcast, because it genuinely means the world to me. If today's episode hit, share it with a running friend, leave a rating, and come find me over on any form of social media and Mike Runs Marathons. We have new episodes every Monday. And until then, I want to remind you to run your race at your pace because we are resilient. And I'll see you out there on the road and on the trails. Bye.